Welcome back to the channel, guys. On today's video, we are going to be breaking down some of my favorite baits to fish for each water column. Okay, so we're going to be talking about top water and fishing that first foot of water. We're going to be talking about the middle of the water column, so from about 1 foot under the surface down to, a foot or two above the bottom. We're also going to be talking about fishing the bottom, which is actually my favorite place to actually fish, is the very bottom of the water column. Okay, so that's stuff like jigs and Texas rigs. So if you like this type of stuff, stick around. We're going to be breaking down all that and what I actually go out and fish. And this is going to be for small and largemouth bass. And I wanted to keep it kind of non-biased between the two. I know I do a lot of smallmouth fishing right now, just because of the area I'm in. It has a lot of smallmouth, but it hasn't always been that way. I am a big largemouth fisherman, but right now, just the location I'm in, I do a lot of smallmouth fishing. Okay, so I wanted to keep it unbiased. If you like this type of stuff, go ahead and leave a like. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not a member already. Also, turn on the notification bell, and let's get going with this video. So I'm on a business trip, so I'm filming this in my hotel room right now, so I'm sorry if the lighting conditions aren't the greatest. I'm trying to work with what I got, okay? So that's what we have to do when we keep it blue collar, right? We gotta work with what we got. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is break down top waters. What I actually throw to catch bass on a topwater situation. Okay, the first thing we want to ask ourselves is, when are we going to fish topwater? Okay, I typically am only going to fish topwater when it's hot. Okay, and typically that's not going to be during the day. It's going to be a very early morning, or it's going to be a late evening type of fishing situation, unless there's a lot of cover and a lot of shade on whatever body of water I'm trying to fish in. Okay, so my favorite topwaters to actually throw is going to be a Whopper Plopper, and this is a Whopper Plopper 90. Okay, I think the 90, this is another Whopper Plopper 90. They're two different style versions. I can't remember what this one's actually called. This is like the original. It's got a more slim profile, and then this one's got like a fat belly on it. I can't remember what this one's actually called. But this is both the 90 size, and I think the 90 size is perfect, especially if you're going to be going after smallmouth too. So the bait profile is actually small enough that it's going to be edible for a smallmouth bass as well. Colors for topwater. I keep it really simple, guys. I don't have the black one out today, but I like to throw a black, I like to throw the white, and then this is a perch color. Keep it really simple. Honestly, the black and the white is all you need. Okay, that is going to mimic pretty much anything, guys. Anything that's gonna fall in the water, like a baby bird, a rat, a mouse, whatever, it's gonna mimic all that stuff. This one's gonna mimic more of a bait fish pattern, since it is in that perch. But guys, the bass are gonna hone in on that. It's a huge protein-packed meal for them, and they're definitely gonna hone in on it. So those are the color options I use for the Whopper Plopper. The reason I like a Whopper Plopper is this rubber paddle on it really gets to churning in the water, and it causes a lot of commotion, and those bass go nuts over it. Okay, so as soon as this thing hits the water, I'm gonna let it, pause just a second, and then I'm gonna rip it. Okay, and when I rip it real quick, that paddle is gonna turn really fast, cause a lot of commotion, and then I'm gonna pause it again. And then I might go for a amount of time, maybe 1 or 2 seconds, where I'm reeling this thing consistent, and then I pause it again. Okay, when I pause it, the back end's gonna sink down just a little bit, kind of like it does with a regular topwater popper, and we're gonna talk about that next. But guys, the first one up for topwater is gonna be the Whopper Plopper. Okay, my second bait I fish for topwater is gonna be, of course, topwater popper. And color options on this one, this is like the bone color, it's just white, and it's got the white tail. And then this one is like a sexy chrome shad color. You can see the blue on top. It's kind of got the chartreuse on the side, and then it's got the chrome on the bottom. But these are great. These are Strike King topwater poppers, and they do have the rattles inside. So these are awesome, guys. I love to throw these out, especially for smallmouth in the summer. So I'll let it hit the water, and I'll let it sit there until all the ripples have gone away. Okay, and you might have heard that technique before. And kind of just give the bass a second to kind of key in after this bait has dropped in the water, because they might be skeptical at first. And then I'm gonna start giving it a little pop. So I'm gonna mix it up, guys. I might do pop, pop, let it pause, or I might do pop, 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 let it pause. I just might do a pop. Okay, either way, guys, just keep it erratic, kind of mix it up with your retrieves, and you're gonna be just fine with these. These top waters are great, guys. Once again, I would only probably fish this if I'm fishing ponds. I might pick these a little bit more often. Other than that, it's gonna be an early morning, late evening situation when it is hot out. That water temperature needs to be closer to 75 degrees at least before I'm gonna be throwing these. So the awesome thing about this topwater popper is when it's sitting there, it'll dip down like this. So make sure you get yourself a good topwater popper. These Strike King poppers are awesome because they do have enough weight in the back to where when they're sitting there in the water, they'll actually dip down like that. And these feathers or whatever kind of material you have on the tail here will dip down in the water and kind of hang below the surface of the water. And that really, really triggers those bass. Guys, for the topwater Whopper Ploppers and these right here, so the Whopper Plopper, I'm gonna be throwing this on probably a medium heavy power bait caster rod, or if you have a spinning rod that is a medium heavy power, I'll go ahead and throw it on that one because this does have a little bit more weight to it. And then the topwater popper, this is really light bait. I'm probably gonna go ahead and throw this on a medium power spinning rod. So probably pull these out more with the smallmouth rods and stuff that I'm gonna be using. Okay guys, so that covers what baits I use for topwater, just being really the Whopper Plopper and a topwater popper. Sometimes I'll use a jerkbait that actually is a topwater jerkbait that actually only goes down to about a foot under the surface of the water. So I do use those sometimes, but that's gonna lead us into the second category, which is the middle of the water column. And the middle of the water column, guys, can get very, very exciting because we're gonna be fishing a lot of moving baits. We're really trying to imitate a lot of bait fish and things that are gonna be moving through the water that those bass are gonna be actively feeding on. So what I mean by that is we're gonna be using crankbaits. We're also gonna be using spinnerbaits and jerkbaits. Okay, so these are gonna be the three different ones that I'm gonna talk about for fishing the middle of the water column. I really don't have a favorite out of the three, but they all do catch bass. Depending on the location, that's gonna drive what type of crankbait or what type of jerkbait, or if I'm just gonna go with the spinnerbait, okay? They're all gonna imitate a moving or dying bait fish. Okay, so the first one we're gonna talk about is the crankbait. And I fish multiple different types of crankbaits, definitely depending on what I want the bait to do. So if I'm gonna fish really close to the bottom of the water column, and even on the very, very bottom, that is gonna be this deep diving crankbait. This right here dives anywhere from 10 to 12 feet deep. And I fish all of my crankbaits on fluorocarbon lines, so that is also gonna help the bait get down to the bottom. And the key for crankbaits, and definitely watch my crankbait video, is getting this on the bottom to bump across the bottom, okay? That big lip is gonna be bumping off of rocks, it's gonna be bumping off the sand, really making a big disturbance in the water. Also, a square bill crankbait. And these are typically the only two I'm gonna use is a deep diving crankbait, which has a round bill on it, and then the square bill. This square bill is gonna get me about 3 to 5 feet deep, which is gonna cover most of my water levels in the river I fish. And it's really gonna give me the fishability that I'm looking for. So if I'm throwing this around thick cover, such as like down logs and stuff, and I really wanna get it close to the log, I can still do it with this square bill. And that bill is gonna deflect off of those logs, it's gonna deflect off of rocks, and this thing is gonna have a very erratic action in the water. Okay, this is a KVD Strike King 1.5, and I have it in a chartreuse, I also have some of them in sexy shad. This is a 1.0, so this is a really small one that I use for smallmouth, but this is like the mid-size right here, the 1.5, and I really like this one for either small or largemouth bass. As for the colors, I keep it pretty simple. You know, chartreuse, sexy shad, or I might go with like a white and black. And that's just about it. I keep it very simple. I keep it very, very easy to determine what I'm gonna use. And if I'm going more after smallmouth bass, I'll probably use chartreuse. They love They love chartreuse. But any other time, it's probably going to be sexy shad. I think this is a really good bluegill or bait fish imitator, and that's what I'm going to go with. And guys, for these bigger ones, I'm going to throw these on a bait caster with a medium heavy power rod. And these smaller ones like this, I can throw this one on a bait caster, but I'm definitely going to throw this one on a spinning rod. Okay, just that way I can cast it a little bit further and not have to worry about getting very finessey with that bait caster. I can just throw these small ones on a spinning rod. And if I'm fishing that small one, I'm going to be fishing it with my smallmouth rods, which are usually medium power spinning rods. Okay, so we covered crankbaits. Now we're going to move on to jerkbaits. And I have a bunch of different types of jerkbaits here. This is a Rapala X-Wrap, and this is a suspending jerkbait, and it goes down about, I would say, anywhere from 5 to 6 feet deep, and it kind of just hangs out once you get it there. And that's one cool thing about a suspending jerkbait is it doesn't float back up to the top like a crankbait normally does, or a floating jerkbait. This jerkbait, like you pull it down to 3 to 4 feet deep, it's going to stay there until you pop it again, and it's probably going to go on down a little bit further. But a suspending jerkbait is one of my go-tos now. Okay, I didn't really feel very comfortable with them, but I have been fishing them a little bit more recently, especially going after smallmouth bass. And I haven't fished a largemouth with jerkbaits yet, but smallmouth bass freaking love these things. So this has become one of my go-to baits on any river that I'm fishing now. And this right here is a Strike King KVD suspending jerkbait. And then also I have a jerkbait that is the H2O Express. This is an Academy style jerkbait from Academy. Okay, this is also a suspending jerkbait. So once again, I keep it very simple with the colors. Sexy shad, chartreuse, and always have a natural shad pattern in this chrome and black. Okay, and Rapala, one thing I've found about Rapala, they make a lot of baits that are specifically targeted towards river fishing. And that is one cool thing about this X-Wrap, is it is very, very popular on rivers. And that's one reason it is my go-to bait, and it has been for years. So that is jerkbaits. And guys, jerkbaits, I always typically throw these bigger ones on a bait caster, but sometimes this X-Wrap and some of the other ones, I'm not afraid to throw this on a spinning rod, especially if I'm already out fishing for smallmouth. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it on the same rod combos that I would for all my other smallmouth baits. All right, let's move into the spinnerbait. So the old spinnerbait was one of my favorite baits. I grew up fishing these all the time because it is so simple. If you have kids, or if you're just new to fishing or whatever, and you don't want to get hung up on a lot of stuff, and you just want to get out there and have a good time and fish, and the simplicity of this spinnerbait is just awesome. You can fish these on lakes, you can fish them in rivers, you can fish these things in ponds. They are going to catch bass all the freaking time. I throw these in the wintertime, I throw them in the fall, throw them in the dead of summer, spring, whatever. These things catch bass. I don't care who tells you they don't, they freaking do. And these things are awesome. And we're going to talk about the different kinds that I throw. And I keep it pretty simple. Once again, white or chartreuse and white. And sometimes when the water is super muddy, I'll go ahead and throw a black. This is the black and red. And also, one thing you want to keep in mind is water clarity. Okay, if it is super, super clear water, I'm probably not throwing a spinnerbait because this is just a lot of metal and it doesn't really look natural. So I'm probably not throwing this in super, super clear water, but super stained water, muddy water, or moderately stained water. I'm gonna pull this out all the time. Okay, and 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna throw a spinnerbait that has a big willow leaf blade and then has a small Colorado blade on it, or I'll throw one that has 2 willow blades. And what that is going to do, it's going to put off a lot of flash, but it's not going to throw off a lot of vibration. It's going to give off enough vibration, but it's not going to be too overwhelming as, you know, this big Colorado blade would. And right here, I would throw, like I said, the black and red in a super muddy water situation. And this big Colorado blade is gonna be churning through the water, putting off a lot of vibration. And that's really gonna be key in that muddy water to actually pull the fish in and actually get them to strike at it, okay? You have to be able to get the fish to even see it, and that big Colorado blade is gonna pull them in and actually get them into striking distance. Okay, if the water is moderately stained to a little bit more muddy, okay, I'm not gonna be afraid to pull out one that has a little bit smaller Colorado blade, and it's also in like a chartreuse and white color. That's still okay. This is gonna put off a lot of flash, and it's gonna put off pretty good amounts of vibration too. And I really, really like throwing a spinnerbait for all types of bass. It doesn't matter if it's a largemouth or smallmouth. I've found these things catch bass all the time in whatever situation. This is my go-to bait on a lake. Okay, if I'm out fishing, you know, a mini tournament or something on a lake, I'm definitely pulling out a spinnerbait. It's just so easy to power fish. We can really be pulling the boat down a bank line, and I'm just power fishing that whole bank, just throwing spinnerbaits constantly. I will say, guys, if you're going to fish a spinnerbait, okay, they typically come like this, right? They only have one main hook. I would suggest getting what is called a trailer hook. And what it is, this is what I get. I get the Strike King ones at Walmart. I think these are like $2.50, $3, whatever. But what that does, it has a rubber piece right here, and you just stick it right across the hook right there, and that is gonna keep that on the hook. It's like a little hook keeper. Okay, it's not gonna slide past that barb. Okay, so if you have a fish that is coming up to strike at this, and they actually miss this main hook, because with a spinnerbait, a lot of times they'll short strike. They won't actually grab the hook. This trailer hook right here is gonna get them. Okay, so definitely, if you're gonna fish a spinnerbait, pick you up a set of trailer hooks, and that is gonna increase your hookup ratio tremendously, I promise you. All right, so that is spinnerbaits. They are the last bait that I really fish in the middle of the water column. And guys, if you're not throwing these, you're missing out on a lot of action. So spinnerbaits, they are awesome, use them. Okay, moving into my favorite water column, and that is the bottom of the water column, right on the very bottom of the river, bottom of the lake, whatever it may be. This is my favorite water column to fish. And my favorite bait to actually fish for smallmouth and largemouth, if I was gonna pick one that I could use for both and be the most versatile that's gonna catch bass year round, that is gonna be the jig. I fish a lot of different types of jigs, but the main ones that I use are gonna be just a regular ball head jig. This has a natural fall to it, or more like a casting or arky style head jig. And I find that these are really good for just about everything. It's a very versatile jig, and they're good for casting, they're good for flipping, they're good for, you know, dragging across the bottom. They're good for just about everything. So it's a very versatile jig, and that is one reason I like them. Okay, as far as sizes, you know, I'll go all the way down. This is my smallmouth jigs right here, and these are like a 1/4 ounce. They're really light, and all the way up to this big 3/4 ounce football head jig. And I would probably only use this around like big rock ledges or things like that. Or if I'm gonna be fishing very deep water and I wanna get this bait down in the water column as fast as possible, that's when I'm gonna be throwing a football head jig. But 9 times out of 10, my go-to jigs for both smallmouth and largemouth, if I'm not actually focusing on one or the other, I'm gonna throw these big 3/8 ounce jigs. And I throw them in green pumpkin and black and blue. That is all you need, guys. As far as the colors go, black and blue, green pumpkin. That is it. Okay, the black and blue, I throw this typically when the water is really murky, really stained, or really muddy. And I'm gonna throw this natural green pumpkin color when it is moderately stained or really clear water. And I find, you know, they just work. I mean, I've even thrown the black and blue jig in super clear water and it still catches bass. I don't know what it is about it. They just love a jig. And on this one, I have a little net bait chunk trailer on it. Typically when you buy these from the store, they come with a Strike King Rage Crawl trailer on them. And I picked these up from Walmart. I have a couple different packs here. I always have a bunch of these on hand, and I strongly suggest you going out to Walmart and picking some of these Strike King Pro Model jigs up. And they have them usually in black and blue and the green pumpkin. And these are on the bottom shelf typically at Walmart, and they're like $2.50 for a pack, and it comes with the jig, and it's a rattle jig. It's got a little rattle on it, and it comes with 2 Strike King Rage Crawl trailers, which is pretty cool, guys. You can't even really buy the jig itself for $2.50 if you bought it by itself. So it's a really good deal. Okay, so this is my go-to. It's blue collar at its finest, and I love picking these things up. Every time I go to Walmart, I pick up like 2 or 3 at least, just to have them in my tackle box. All right, I think I'm gonna do a video right after this breaking down why I think the jig is my favorite bass lure of all time. So definitely check out that video that I'm gonna do on that one as well. But guys, this is my go-to bait for fishing the bottom if I was gonna fish for both small and largemouth bass. Okay, moving into another bait that I love to fish on the bottom, and that is a Texas rig. You know, what can be said about the Texas rig that hasn't already been said, you know, by everybody else? It freaking catches fish all the time. It's so versatile. You can do anything with the Texas rig. My God, the Texas rig, you can even fish a floating worm on the surface with it. You can fish just about any type of bait with it. We got, you know, creature baits or bug style baits. We got stick baits or Senkos. We got lizards. We got crawls. We have curly tail worms. We got trick worms. You know, the list goes on and on. These baits just catch fish. And guess what? If you got one that's not catching fish, you switch it out. You use the same hook, same bullet weight, or fish it weightless. Either way, you can switch it up. It's so versatile. That's why the Texas rig is one of my favorite baits to fish on the bottom. Okay, and what I use is an extra wide gap hook, and I'm typically gonna fish either a 3/0 or all the way up to a 5/0 hook, and it is an extra wide gap hook, and it doesn't really matter if it's a thick wire or a thin wire hook. If I'm gonna be fishing it on like a spinning combo or something, I might use like a thinner wire hook. But for a bait caster with a medium heavy power rod, I'm not gonna be afraid to use a heavier gauge hook. Okay, as far as bullet weights go, if we actually fish the Texas rig weighted, I'm gonna be using either a 3/4 ounce weight or a 3/16 ounce weight, and that's gonna get the bait down on the bottom as quick as possible. And depending on how fast the current is and stuff is gonna depend on actually how heavy that bullet weight needs to be. So if I'm fishing a river that has a lot of strong current, I'm gonna be throwing a heavier bullet weight, or if I'm in a lake that has a lot deeper water, and let's say rock ledges, I'm gonna be throwing a heavier bullet weight. And also, if you're gonna be using a weighted style Texas rig that has a bullet weight, and you're gonna be fishing around thick cover and stuff, I suggest you getting some of these bobber stops. And what that is gonna do is you're gonna put this bobber stop on first, and then you're gonna put your bullet weight on and then your hook, and that's gonna keep that weight from sliding up and down the line. It's gonna keep it pinned in place. That way, if you do get snagged around like a little limb or something in the water or around some structure, you know, that bullet weight isn't gonna slide down and put more weight on the other side. It's actually gonna have a better chance of getting unstuck. So I strongly suggest heavy cover fishing with the Texas rig, use a bobber stop. Okay, as far as the baits themselves go, my go-to is a green pumpkin Senko. And this right here is, once again, blue collar at its finest. These are the Walmart stick baits. You can get Ozark Trail model, and they're like $1.50 for a pack of 8. And these things are very, very similar to a Yamamoto Senko. You know, Gary Yamamoto invented the Senko way back when, and this has pretty much the same salt content and fall rate as those Yamamoto Senkos. So, you know, pick yourself up some. It's a really good deal. If I'm out fishing for smallmouth, I'll use some chartreuse, but this also catches largemouth. And these are both 5-inch Senkos. I think that is like probably the best all around length. And also, you know, if I'm gonna be fishing primarily for smallmouth, I'll go ahead and get like the 3-inch versions, and they're cut off about right there. But hey, all you have to do is pop about 2 inches off of this, and you're good to go smallmouth fishing, right? Okay, when it comes to, you know, colors and stuff, once again, it's kind of like the jigs. If I'm gonna be fishing dark, stained, muddy water, I'm gonna be fishing black and blue. You know, this right here, I'm gonna be fishing in clear or stained water. And this is like it's got like a blue and it's got like a green pumpkin to it. So it's a little bit of a mixed color, but it is kind of like a lighter blue and green pumpkin. But other than that, you know, I keep it pretty simple, guys. If it's muddy, I'm fishing dark colors. If it's light, I'm fishing, you know, very natural colors. Such as this. If I'm fishing clear water, trick worm wise, this right here is about as natural as you can get. And this is like a pumpkin seed with a chartreuse tail on it. And that's about it, guys. I keep it very simple. And you don't have to get very, very overly crafty and creative with all your color options. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion. I think the key to fishing is presenting that bait in front of the fish. If you can get a bait in front of a fish and make it look appetizing and actually make it look realistic, that fish is gonna eat it, okay? So I think a lot of times it's the presentation, not as much as the color. And you've probably heard me talk about this before, and that's the key, guys. All right, so I hope you liked this video. We broke down, you know, the different baits that I use for each level of the water columns. We've started out with the top waters. We started talking about these topwater poppers. We use Whopper Ploppers. We moved into the middle of the water column where we fish, you know, deep diving crankbaits. We use some square bill crankbaits. We got our jerkbaits, which are freaking awesome. Very fun to catch fish on, especially when you pause it and that bait is just paused in the water and then they smack it when it's paused. That is an awesome feeling, guys. We also have the old trusty spinnerbait with our trailer hook. Don't forget your trailer hook. But that is going to be a very, very key player when it comes to fishing that middle of the water column. And then lastly, we got the bottom of the water column. And like I said, my go-to bait is these freaking big jigs. So I forgot to mention, one reason I like these big jigs is because if you want big bass to bite, present a big bait. Okay, this is gonna eliminate those little dinks from biting your bait. I mean, I've seen them bite these. I think I've even had rock bass eat these. But hey, most of the time, you throw a bigger bait, you're gonna catch bigger bass. And I've even caught big smallmouth on these too. Actually, I caught one of my personal best smallmouth on this, and they just catch fish, guys. But hey, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please leave a like. Also subscribe to the channel so that way you can see more videos like this. And like I said, I'm on a business trip right now, so I wasn't actually able to get outside and, you know, do some fishing and stuff like I wish I could have, because typically I do a lot of filming outside. The lighting's a lot better and stuff. But hey, I wanted to get some videos out for you guys, even though I'm in a hotel room. And hopefully you like this stuff. And guys, if you want to see more stuff like this, turn on that notification bell. And thanks for watching. You guys, keep it blue collar.